The Megaraptor is a new creature for the Valguero map for Ark Survival Ascended. It has a unique taming method that hasn't been seen before in Ark, and it seems simple enough, but a lot can go wrong with the tame which many other videos won't warn you about, so I'm here to give you some pro tips to make this tame go much smoother and easier for you. Starting off with spawn locations, a lot of people will tell you that they only spawn in the redwoods, but in fact, they have multiple spawn locations all across the map. If you take a look at this spawn graphic here, which was created by one of my favorite Japanese art creators, Aoshi Bafu, and given to me with permission to use in this video, you'll see that there are multiple spawn points across the map. What I found with my research is that these spawn points are fairly fixed to these areas, and I believe that's because of the altar that's required for taming. My favorite and one of the easiest spawn locations for the map is further north. Here you can see two altars together, it's relatively flat and not too many creatures in the area, and in the distance you can see some Megaraptors in the background hunting. This is the location on the map and the coordinates are 32.8 and 33.1. There are several spawn locations in the White Cliff areas of the map. These are pretty good, but you do need to watch out for aloes and raptors in the area. This one is in the White Cliffs area near the castle ruins. This is the location on the map. This one is located on the eastern part of the White Cliff area. Here is the location on the map. This one is located here in the northern part of the White Cliff area. You can see its spawn torch area. Here we are on the map and the latitude is 63.5 and 85.6. This one is located in the White Cliffs area in one of the little canyons here. This is our location on the map. It's around 71.5 and 65.4. As stated, there are quite a few spawns in the redwoods area. My problem with the redwoods is the amount of small threats in the area, including microraptors, pegamastics, and terror birds that can really mess up the tame here. For this spot right here, you can see that we're close to red ob. It is 73.4 and 18.2. This one is located just on the outskirts of the redwoods. Here is the location on the map. The coordinates here I am at are 62.8 and 26.9. They also have a jungle spawn on the map. This one is located not too far away from the green obelisk on the eastern side of the map. This is the location here. We're at 44 and 89.6. The gear that you will need to bring along for the tame is multiple sets of armor. If you're using primitive torches, you definitely want lots and lots of torches. If you have it, even better, bring along the highest level torches you can find. I also recommend bringing along some med brews and some food in case you take hits during the taming process. Its preferred taming food is exceptional kibble, but you can also use raw mutton. A high level 1 on 1x race will probably require narcotics to keep it asleep. Of course, the best way to find them is with a gene scanner. They do move quite far from their altar at times. Sometimes the Megaraptor will find you first. If your screen goes all foggy and grey, that means you are being hunted by the Megaraptor and it's coming over to pounce on you. The hunted status effect means that your vision is obscured while you have a countdown timer. The effect lasts for around 6 seconds. If you have a vision disability, this can be really frustrating. What you can actually do is use the command r.fog0 to actually get rid of the fog effect. This command will work on both official servers, unofficial servers, and single player. I am wearing my glasses and I like the spooky nature of the fog, so I'm going to keep it on. Once you've found the Megaraptor, you need to find the Megaraptor altar. This is a bloodied spike that should be on the ground in the area nearby to the Megaraptor, so have a look around until you find it. And you can see we've got one right here. Before you approach the altar to start the taming process, my next recommendation is to clear out the area of any threats. Aggressive creatures will interrupt the taming process, and even passive ones will distract the Megaraptor from its altar because it goes into hunt mode. The next thing I also recommend you do is to go into settings and go into audio and then turn up your sound effects volume. I find it helpful to use an audio cue to get the timing of the attacks right. When you approach the Megaraptor altar, you'll see a prompt that says, requires a torch to challenge the Megaraptor. When you equip the torch, it gives you the option to hold down the radio menu and start the challenge. When you approach the altar, you sometimes get an error that says the Megaraptor is out hunting. This means it's off fighting other creatures. You have a few options here. Often I just choose to wait while it fights the creature and then it's ready to come back later on. Often it might start hunting you, and you can also start the tame while you're being hunted. You can have a tribe mate or a friend kill creatures in the area. One thing to be mindful of is if it's fighting creatures, it can sometimes die and then the altar won't be available anymore. Once you accept the challenge, you essentially become tethered or tied to the altar. You can only move using your left and right keys or your joystick back and forth. You can't move away from the altar. The Megaraptor will jump out of the shadows and you have to bonk it on the head with the torch in order to do torpor damage. Now this sounds simple enough. It's actually quite tricky and there's a few things that you need to know ahead of time to make this taming process easier. And the number one thing to make this easier is that the type of torch you use does matter significantly. I tamed a level 15 with only using primitive torches. It should be noted that I was equally as bad with the taming bonks for both of these tames. With the level 15 with the primitive torch, I had to successfully hit it on the head 16 times to knock it out. In that process, I also broke 1 or 2 torches. This is important because if the Megaraptor attacks you and you don't have a torch in hand, the taming process actually stops. You can go back and reapproach the altar after you've been disturbed. It has some cooldown effect and you will lose some torpor after this. For the level 20, using a high level ascendant torch, I only had to successfully hit it 8 times and the taming went a lot faster. The next big issue I ran into with taming was having my tame interrupted by wild and aggressive creatures. This was particularly enraging because if you brought out a weapon to try and fight off the creatures, the Megaraptor would show up, you wouldn't have a torch, and the taming process would stop. My first thought to combat this would be to surround the altar with behemoth gates and doors. This made approaching the altar with the Megaraptor inside the gates quite difficult. If you successfully dodge it, you can get to the altar and start the taming process. But I did approach it at one time while it was outside the gates, and I was able to have it teleport in and start the taming process. However, it was evident that using gates was also causing problems. There were times it wasn't able to teleport into the area, it got stuck in the gates, and it stopped the taming process. To understand why this doesn't work sometimes, it's helpful to see another player taming it. It's helpful to know that when the Megaraptor disappears into the shadows, it isn't actually going far away from the player. But it does teleport in and out, and you can clearly see this here watching Mr. Krabby trying to fight it. If you want to try using behemoth gates, I recommend putting them in a wider circle around the altar. But what I like to do is if I have a friend or tribe member on a server, I like to help them out by clearing out aggressive creatures for them in the area. If you are a solo player, I highly recommend making sure the area is completely clear before you start the tame. The next issue I want to help players with is the correct bonk of the torch on the Megaraptor head. This is a mechanic I really struggled with at first. I would say that I would only get a correct bonk every 2 or 3 attacks from the Megaraptor. The issue that this causes is if you miss a strike, you will notice that the torpor starts to drop quicker over time, making the tame take longer and become harder. We already know that an ascendant torch is your best bet at dealing more torpor, so make sure you craft some of those. My next piece of advice is to stand still. I found when I was moving side to side, I was more likely to miss an attack. I noticed that the Megaraptor would almost always attack me from the side or from behind, so I maintained a fixed position looking slightly up at the sky, and as soon as I heard its first squeak of attack, which is why I recommend putting the volume louder, I would spin, bonk my torch, but always making sure that I was aiming up higher into the sky. You cannot spam swing your torch because you'll notice there is a cooldown on the torch swings. I found that this led to the most successful amount of attacks. Occasionally the Megaraptor will change its direction in which it's looking, but you can adapt this strategy to the new direction. I actually found it easier to do in first person. Many people actually prefer doing it in third person. They find it easier to notice and do the strike that way. So flip between the two and see which one you like best. Quickly flicking and changing your direction is quite easy to do with a mouse and keyboard, but it's actually incredibly hard to do with a controller. So for those that play on a console or with a controller, there is another method you can use which was recommended by a friend of mine. She actually spins consistently around and around and around the pole, eventually bumping into the Megaraptor and swinging her torch in an upward direction. She would often get the narcotic hit with good timing. Try this out if you're also having difficulty with the other method. I hope the tips in this video helped you successfully tame a Megaraptor. If they did, please leave a comment letting me know your favorite one. My name is Krabbytron and I make accurate, concise guides for Ark Survival Ascended. If you like that, you can subscribe to more, or you can click on this one right here.